Mr. Chachra, your analysis of the situation as it stands today, it would be a travesty if we continue to focus on whataboutery at this point in time. It would be a travesty if we say that we haven't learned anything from what happened in 2012 and the subsequent rapes and murders which have happened in our country, even the concomitant rapes and murders which have happened, Mr. Chachra, in our country, along with the one that took place in Kolkata.
Sadly, 12 years after Nirbhaya, Viniji, we are talking about safety and right to life for women, of women. This is a sad trajectory. And today, this is again, after 12 years, a national question under social scrutiny. We heard the speakers here, and the lawyer before me was speaking to it. This is 12 years after politics, all kind, all parties, and governance, and even the judiciary, the spate of promises, the spate of reforms, as was said, lots of laws, new laws were installed. Remember the POCSO Act in 2013, the amendments to the POCSO Act, also the amendments to the CRPC, and now the new Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita. And the court has noted that these procedures are not being followed, the Honorable Court today. So this is the say that we don't seem to have landed in a better place in these 12 years, despite all of that, last 12 years of promises, of social scrutiny. So I think it's something that we need to worry about as a society. Even the data points to that. If you look at the data of National Crime Records Bureau between 2012 and the last report, 2021, 22, the numbers haven't fallen, the numbers of grave crimes against women. And some may argue that these numbers have grown because of reporting, but certainly the numbers haven't followed. Even as I speak, you have in this week itself so many rape cases, and the courts are seized of those matters. Needless to say, the Supreme Court has made very, very strong observations on the question of how things have happened in the investigations and the delays in FIRs. But that's not just the Supreme Court itself. Today and yesterday, the Bombay High Court also made a similar observation in the case in Thane, in Maharashtra, saying that it took 12 hours and it took people's protests in terms of registering FIRs in the case of two minor girls. One of them's statement still not recorded, as I understand. In the case of Pune, which is again being re-looked at, the police seems to have sided with the perpetrator. So I think there's something that we need to worry about hugely of where we are going. And this is not a unique instance we are discussing. I think that's something that I want to point out. I also want to say that the court very strongly said today, observed today, that we should not politicize. And I think earlier you were speaking to it with Nilanjanji. And sure enough, we should not politicize. But if you look at it, politics or patriarchy are always played over dead bodies of women, and also the victims and survivors in this question. And that's exactly what we see happening. And I think all the political parties really need to introspect. Vinitji, I would like to say. Recently, there was a data released from the Association of Democratic Reforms and the National Election Watch. And they say that out of the 4,000 or 700 or around that numbers of MLAs and MPs on our land, 151 of them have cases against them, crimes against women-related cases. 16 of them are grave cases, cases of rape registered against them. So I think there's something that we need to worry about, introspect, as political parties, as societies, as the law enforcement agencies. The Supreme Court earlier orders for the formation of the National Task Force are indeed welcome. I mean, it relates, of course, to hospitals, medical professionals, medical workers, a range of categories involved with hospitals, and that's really welcome because we do know it's a dire need. We do know that, the question of gender-based violence and an action plan on gender-based violence is direly needed, sorely needed. But I think I want to go beyond, and I want to say that, this kind of a national task force should extend to beyond the hospitals. Because if you look at the question of women and work, if you look at the question of women workers across our land, particularly a large majority of them are in the informal sector. And look at their experiences which intersect with their identities, not just as gender, of course, but of caste, class, of religion, of ethnicities. And what is the kind of lack of security, safety, and protection do they face in the social space, in the workspace, but also in relation with institutions which are meant to protect them. Hospitals, police, courts. I think there's a whole range of things that we need to be looking at, introspecting in view of what is needed, huge social progress. I think it's not just the question of implementation of law. I think that is entirely and solely needed, a very, very strict implementation of existing laws, sensitization of personnel around it, and accountability of personnel around it. But recently, I was hearing the Honorable Prime Minister speak at the Independence Day address. He made 2 points. One, on the question of invoking women's safety. Second, on the question of invoking institutions in the public space, whether these are panchayats and others. He mentioned some lacks of institutions for invoking them to undertake two reforms. I think those two dots need to be connected. That is where we are today. I think the first and the foremost reform that all of these institutions, whether it's the urban local bodies or the panchayats or higher institutions, which have jurisdictions over people, they must ensure freedom from fear, freedom from all kind of abuse, freedom from all kind of discrimination for all the women within their jurisdiction on an online. And I think it's a huge thing. And I just want to make a point here to end. And I want to say that a tectonic shift is indeed needed. A culturally tectonic shift is needed in terms of ensuring women have equal and safe futures. We need to consign patriarchy to the dustbin it belongs to. So that's how I would like to see this whole debate unraveling.
Thank you, Mr. Chachra. 20 seconds, sir.
So just quick two things. I think this sensational approach to justice must stop. And I think the point is, as a citizen, as a woman of this land, what protection do I have? Women have been asking this question for how long do we have to wait, irrespective of which state it is in, number one. Number two, I think this whole welcome move of restraining, which the Supreme Court said today, restraining any state in terms of its action on peaceful protesters is indeed welcome. And I think it'll go far beyond this particular state or this particular instance. As we know, those who are defending or fighting for against sexual harassment, they face considerable backlash. And this backlash is institutionalized. We have seen it across states. And not only is it institutionalized, it's also criminalized. So I think this kind of a sort of welcome observation today will be quoted long and will be used long in terms of decriminalization of protests, in terms of peaceful protests, in terms of accountability of the states and the state and the center in asking the right questions, which people are today. Thank you so much.